Chip Fattah is going to join us. As you know, last week he was the talk of the town and continues to be the talk of the town as he was convicted in federal court last week of bank and tax fraud charges. We are proud to have in studio Chaka Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah. He just completed 16 days in federal court defending his honor and his reputation. He was convicted this past Thursday on bank and tax fraud charges in court, 22 of 23 charges. We wanted to give Chip Fattah Jr. the chance to give his own story to you, the listeners of 900 AM WURD. You have been a friend to the Nick Taliaferro Show. Chip, thank you very much for being with us. We're going to call you throughout the interview Chip Fattah, not to confuse you with your dad. Okay. Chip, thank you very much for being with us here on 900 AM WURD.
Well, good evening. It's great to be back at the Nick Taliaferro Show, hanging out with you today.
Right.
And
I'm a little thinner, a little smaller than Nick. Yeah.
Right. But it's good to see you, Mr. Thompson.
Come on closer. That's okay. Come on closer and call me Vincent.
Yeah, no problem.
But let's start first things first.
Okay.
You've had the chance since Thursday to kind of let it all soak in about what happened last Thursday, being convicted of 22 of 23 charges. Your reaction to the conviction?
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the jury's verdict, and I'm confident that on appeal that, there ultimately won't be any convictions. Right now we have to deal with these 22 charges. The appeal will be filed approximately on February 2nd, and it's going to take a little bit of time. The appeals process at the Third Circuit, which is the federal appellate court in this area,
that's the Third Circuit Court of Appeals.
The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, and it takes approximately 6 to 18 months to get an appeal, an appeal decision or an appellate decision. But I'm confident. I think that, I would focus the audience in on just the history of what people with my last name have been able to do in this city. It's not so much me, but I've been a businessman who's worked hard in order to achieve a level of success. In this case, unfortunately, I was really vilified for, living a good life. After working hard, ultimately I was able to get a nice apartment downtown. That's not a federal crime, but these are the type of things that I was actually convicted of. Not so much, there wasn't so much proof of, me lying to a bank or, me lying to the IRS. And that's really what happened in this case. It's really unfortunate, but I think on appeal, I'm very optimistic about my chances, and it's important to remind the audience that I have no criminal history outside of this matter. This is a serious matter. However, I'm confident that after the appeals process, I'm going to be fine. Let's
delve a little bit into that if we can.
Okay.
On Thursday, the federal prosecutors had urged the judge to basically remand you to prison because they were concerned about what you may do. Whether you might be a flight risk or you might do any of that, just to comfort folks who might be listening.
Right.
You're not going to do any of that, right? You're not going to be a flight risk. You're not leaving. You're not suddenly going to abscond to Mexico or anything like that. I know you're not. I just want to make sure that we get that on the record.
No, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, first of all, the judge agreed to let me go home, and pending sentencing in early February. So it really wasn't a big question. I mean, the government brought it up. In terms of me being a flight risk, that's ridiculous. I'm from Philadelphia. The government has my passport. I'm not going anywhere. And, I really don't have a couple $1 million in the duffel bag to leave anyway. So I'm just, not that I would leave. Even if I had that, I'd probably just, I don't know, spend a little bit more money in between now and then in Philly.
What do you do now between now and February 2nd when you are planning to file your appeal to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals? Are you just going to be spending most of your time writing your appeal, or?
No, there'll be a lot of legal arguments in between now and then. I can tell your audience, first that there's going to be a legal filing this week that's going to seek to deal with at least half the charges. So I'm going to ask the district court to take another look at a couple of things, and what's called a judgment of acquittal. It's kind of like in layperson's terms, like a motion to set aside the verdict. Despite the jury's verdict on a particular charge, there's a legal issue, and the court should look at it. So there's going to be a motion to essentially dismiss or vacate, at least 11 of the charges out of 22.
And how are you going to argue to vacate those 11?
There's going to be an argument about a legal theory called, if we got any lawyers in the audience, called constructive amendment. Constructive amendment means that, I'm supposed to go to court on what's in the indictment. People, at least who've been following this case and following any criminal matter, ever, they would understand that the charges are presented in the indictment. Part of that is about notice. So, I've had the indictment since, July 2014. The indictment says that this is what I did wrong. Okay, that's the allegations that I was ultimately convicted of. But when you actually get to court, if somebody goes outside the scope of what's written in that indictment, for example, under an issue related to United Bank, the argument in the indictment is that I spent business money on personal expenses. But when you actually get to trial, they brought up a number of issues alleging that, for example, I lied to United Bank about my tax history. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not in the indictment. And then that means that when we got to trial, it was a quote-unquote surprise. I didn't have notice. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. It's a problem for 2 or 3 reasons. One, just very briefly. One
take
is...
your time.
We
got all the time in the world.
Okay, great.
Chip.
Well, I appreciate that. One is, again, notice. So if I had a year and a half to prepare my defense and then we get to court and they change what the allegation is or what the alleged criminal activity is.
You should have had the chance to know that beforehand.
Right, a lot of time.
That's your argument. Okay.
Right, a lot of time beforehand. So, it could have been a month beforehand, but it can't be that we went through a year and a half and then you show up at court one day, they bring a witness up from United Bank, and they pull up a document that has nothing to do with the allegations about how the money was spent.
How confident are you of the court getting rid of 11 of those charges? Because I'm gonna play devil's advocate
That's
here.
Fine.
I think that some of those folks... I think that you might have a difficult time getting a jury to vacate the sentence.
Oh, no,
the judges. A judge to vacate the sentence.
Well,
your best chance might be in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals.
Well, first of all, whatever happens, the worst case scenario is that nothing changes in between now and February 2nd, and that I get sentenced and that an appeal is filed at the Third Circuit. Look, I can beat all 22 of these things on appeal, and I have, I'm confident. That 100% of these convictions will go away. I understand there's some, hopefully we're going to get a chance to take some callers today. And I know that there's some people that have been in the media, who've suggested that, I need counseling or I have these problems because they don't really understand. Because they're just reading what's out there. They haven't actually been at the trial. Of course, they didn't look at the evidence. So hopefully we'll get a caller or two that, has a strong opinion, on the negative side. Maybe we could have a conversation, a calm, professional conversation, here and try to really get to the issues. But I'm confident on appeal. I'm not worried about it at all.
Okay, let's ask. My understanding is February the 3rd is when you're scheduled to be sentenced of 2016.
Been rescheduled to February 2nd.
Oh, it's now February 2nd.
Yes,
okay,
that's correct.
Okay, so now it's February 2nd. We have broken news.
No problem.
So it's February 2nd, no longer February the 3rd.
9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m. Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's ask this question. You're going to file your appeal to the Third Circuit Court on February the 2nd, the same day you're going to be sentenced. My reading from an article, and I can be incorrect on this, but it says, they quote Eric Gibson, the assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted you, one of them, that you faced a minimum of just over 4 years in prison. You'll be, if you are, on the day that you are sentenced, that February 2nd,
right?
Will you instantly have to report to prison, or will you still be able to get out? And also, are you concerned that you might have to spend 4 years in prison? I mean, are you prepared? Are you prepared for that?
Right. Well, there are a couple of things there. First,
take your time.
Yeah. So first, it's unclear whether I have to turn myself in on that day. Okay. So that's up to the judge. Okay. Normally, what happens, and I can tell you there's some things in this case that weren't normal, possibly because of my last name, but in terms of what normally happens, normally I would go on February 2nd and they would say something about, turn yourself in March 2nd or April 2nd, get your affairs in order. Just so we're clear about the timing, I can't file the appeal until I'm actually sentenced. That's why it's February 2nd. I'd like it to be, I'd like to file the appeal tomorrow. But and filing the appeal is not, it's not really your primary arguments on appeal. It's a simple paper. It's a piece of paper that just says, hey, I'm appealing. In legal
So
terms.
literally what will happen on February 2nd is you will get sentenced, and then literally the minute you're done, you're going to file your appeal.
That's right. And if I was taken into custody, somebody else will file it on my behalf. But either way, you have 14 days from the day you get sentenced. And just to kind of so we can parse that out a little bit more, you talked about, this idea that there's a minimum of 4 years and 3 months. That's not accurate. I mean, what he's actually saying, or what AUSA Gibson is actually saying, is that, the guideline range, the sentencing guidelines would call for, in a conviction in this case, a range that would come in the realm of 4 years and 3 months. I mean, the judge has discretion from probation, which, I admit is unlikely, up to a lot more than 4 years and 3 months. The government will make a recommendation. The probation office, which I have yet to meet with, but we'll be meeting with in about 6 or 7 days, will also make a recommendation. They will look at my background. They'll look at, the work I've done for charity, the positive work I've done in the community.
And determine where you might go.
Yeah, they would determine how long they would say.
Okay.
Yeah, so the government will make a recommendation. I would assume that that's going to be more than 4 years and 3 months, possibly a lot more. And the probation office may recommend, I don't
2
want to
years.
say,
I'm just coming up with a number.
hypothetically,
Let's say
could,
2 years.
Right, that could happen. And they could also recommend more. They could recommend something in line with what the government does. And then my side, right now, me, and the Federal Defender's Office will make a recommendation. And that recommendation, will be a lot less than 4 years and 3 months. And then the judge, in this case, the Honorable Harvey Bartle III, will be the one to make the decision.
But I guess my question to you is this. Mm-hmm. There might be some time that let's assume that you do not get probation. You will spend some time in prison. Are you mentally beginning to prepare yourself for the possibility of Chip Fattah, a man who believes he is innocent of all charges, to spend time in federal jail?
Well, I'm not. I would say that I'm always, as a business person, I'm always looking at the downside risk. So obviously it's possible. And to the extent that that's what happens, I'll be prepared. I'm actually prepared right now. But I don't believe that that's what's going to happen. We didn't really talk about it, but there's a focus on, there will be a major argument about bail pending appeal, pending the decision of the Third Circuit. Now, that argument probably will not be made until February 2nd, but I can tell you that we will vigorously fight for, me, to somebody with no criminal history, to be able to essentially, wait for the decision. Because, while the media and everybody and, Twitter has jumped all over this, the fact is that the convictions are not final until the Third Circuit makes their decision, period.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking to Chaka Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah. He is giving 900 AM WURD an exclusive long-form interview, probably one of the longest interviews you've given on the radio since your conviction last week. We are going to open it up to the phone line, so I'm going to let people know. Give us a call at 215-634-8065 or 1-866-361-0900. Let me tell you how it's going to happen here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a commercial break. I'm going to ask Chip a few more questions because I want to get stuff on the record. Then I'm going to open it up to the phone lines. I'm going to ask that the callers be respectful. If you start going over the line of disrespect, I'm going to yank the phone line, okay? He's a big boy. He's 32 years old. He can take the heat, but we're not going to be disrespectful on the air. I think you can ask him the questions you want without being disrespectful. So we're going to take a commercial break right now. You're listening to 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. This is the Nick Taliaferro Show. I'm Vincent Thompson, filling in for Nick. We'll open up the phone lines for you right now. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Nick Taliaferro Show. I'm Vincent Thompson, filling in for Nick Taliaferro, principal at Thompson Media Man Communications, the executive producer of the Nick Taliaferro Show, and also the host of Philadelphia City Council Live here on 900 AM WURD. We are on the air every Thursday from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. I hope you join us this Thursday. Joining me is a very special guest, Chaka Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah, talking about his recent conviction in federal court. Chip, let's bring in something I think that's really important. You're planning an appeal. Will you handle the appeal yourself, or will you get an attorney to handle the appeal?
Well, right now I intend to handle the appeal, but I just want to qualify that because it may not be so clear out here. I don't have the resources right now to hire, qualified appellate counsel. So, I'm looking into some opportunities, possibly even pro bono representation. I've sent some emails out about that today. If I'm able to convince a top law firm in Philadelphia, in New York, in Washington, D.C., to take on this case, then I'd be willing to take a step back. It's not so much, the message that hasn't gotten out is that it's not so much, me just saying I want to take the ball and run with it, or I want to take this case and go my own way. The fact is that, proper counsel in this case would cost $1 million. I just don't have it. So I'd be willing to do it myself because essentially I'm pushed up against a wall and I have no choice.
Let's ask you about that. Do you have a legal team that's helping you construct your defense? During the trial, you were given the opportunity to have, I guess, someone from the legal defender's office, the federal legal defender's office, right, to help you. Are you going to use that person in your defense? Are you looking at getting a new team to help you? How's that going to work for you?
Well, look, the defender's office has been really great, really great. But most of the work I have to do myself. I mean, I will say that the federal defender's office has provided somebody to make sure that they're there, that when the trial was going on, that they, say, hey, Chip, you need to object, or you need to object. And these are the type of things that when they happen in person, well, things are moving very quickly. It's helpful in person. But in terms of, like, for example, I filed more than 35 motions in this case. I wrote at least 33 of them, So, like, it's not the same as having, for example, a firm like Drinker Biddle and Reef, or Skadden, where you can just literally hand them the indictment, have a bunch of interviews, have a bunch of meetings with them, respond to their emails and phone calls, and I could just
and they'll write it for you, right?
Right, they'll do the whole. I mean, I wouldn't be one of the lawyers on the team. It wouldn't be like that, and again, I'm a non-lawyer, but I mean, I wouldn't be filing anything. I wouldn't know how to file a document if I was represented by one of those.
Chip, let me ask you. Looking back at that, some people I have spoken to criticized you for being your own attorney, saying, this is a big time thing and you shouldn't be doing it yourself if you're fighting for your criminal livelihood or you're fighting for your life. Right. Why didn't you utilize the resources of the defender's office? Why in the world did you, and let me have you get a little bit closer to the microphone, all right? Why, no, you can keep it just like that. No but my question to you is this, why did you decide ultimately to defend yourself?
The defender's office, with all due respect, is it's essentially, it's free legal work. And for example, their workload, which has been written about in major national publications, is triple the amount that a firm like Drinker Biddle would put on their attorneys, associates and partners. So for example, they'll be working on at Drinker, and I used to be represented by Drinker, so I'm not just throwing this out there. Drinker Biddle and Reef represented me for 2.5 years prior to the indictment. And I ran up a large bill, and I wasn't able to pay them to keep moving forward. And what I'm telling you is they worked on 15 or 20 cases max. The federal defender's office, including my people, including some of the best people at their office, are working on 60 cases. They don't have the time to study, 120,000 documents. That is the discovery in this case. So when somebody says, if somebody was to say to me, and, I'm very excited to talk to callers today, if somebody says to me, well, hey, you shouldn't have done this, person who, represents himself as a fool for a client, for example. I would just say, look, and if you didn't have a choice and somebody was talking about putting you in jail for the rest of your life, what would you do? I mean, either you have $1 million, you want the free representation. That's the second option we're just talking about now. You have $1 million, like literally $1.5 to $2 million for a 3-week trial. That's the quote I was given. This is on top of billing that's already occurred. So a new firm would say, look, $2 million. Mr. Fattah, give us $2 million. Let's say, give us $300,000, and we'll bill you monthly for the next 6 months for the 1.7. And if you miss a payment, we're gonna not show up. If you miss a payment, we're not going to file anything. Well, look, I don't have $1 million. I don't have $2 million. The federal defender's office, no matter how skilled one person is, or 2 people, or 3 people are, including my people. This isn't a personal attack. This isn't, hey, I don't like her. It's the woman in this case. So it's about their resources. Drinker Biddle works in a different way. They might be working right now. It's after business hours. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works at that office, period. They're at home. They're all at home. Right. And that's the difference here.
Jory, I want to give you the chance to do this. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we're opening up the phone lines. 215-634-8065, 1-866-361-0900. You know what? Let me open up the phone lines to you, Chip Fattah. Let's go with Steve on the cell phone. Steve, you've been holding a long time. You're on 900. Oh, let's go to Tom in West Philadelphia. See, Steve was waiting, and then he decided not to wait. But we're going to give you a call.
Tom.
No, Tom from West Philadelphia. You're on 900 AM WURD with Chip Fattah.
Hey, Tom.
Good evening, Vincent. Good evening, young man.
Good evening.
I have a question for you. Is it that you feel that the folks who you can use as your consultant can do a better job than people who would be officially named as your attorneys? I assume you have consultants in the courtroom with you who are lawyers.
I have a standby counsel, a woman by the name of Nina Spicer from the Federal Defender's Office. I mean, her name is, in the record here. The issue is it's really twofold, Tom. One, I know the facts in this case deals with my personal finances going back to 2004. All right, so I feel that I know the facts better than any attorney, because I live these facts. People are literally arguing about whether I went to a restaurant, whether it be a sandwich shop or a nice restaurant downtown. They're literally arguing about whether that was for business purposes 10 years ago. And it's not one lunch, it's 100, So I'm just saying, and it's arguments about where, how a car was used, whether that was for business use or personal use. And I just think that's one of the two reasons. And the other reason is, look, like I said a moment ago, I just don't have the resources for the top level of what I would consider some people I would be comfortable with, letting take the lead in this case.
Okay, but you say top level, but isn't some level better than no level? I mean, how do you know when to object and all the rest? Is that when you use your advisor sitting there who is a lawyer?
Right. I know how to object, Tom, because one I know how to object because they're sitting there. The other is, I had the opportunity prior to this case to sit in on a few cases. I went down to the narcotics trial. All these trials are public, and I sat there for a few days taking notes. Now, I'm not saying that is a makes up for law school, but in terms of everything else other than objecting, I mean, I literally had to learn while doing, and I think that anybody who looks at my motions, on the docket, on the court system, in August and September would think that, they would probably think they were written by somebody else, versus like, let's say December when I started representing myself. What I'm trying to get across is that, at least in my opinion and what I've heard from observers, some lawyers included, is that, the writing has gotten better, the arguments have gotten stronger, and while apparently I didn't win, what I would say is this isn't over yet.
Oh, are you going to law school after this?
If I can get out of these 22 convictions, which is my plan, and that's at least what I believe is going to happen, I think that, maybe we could talk to UPenn or Harvard about that. I'd be happy to, and I think there's some opportunities out here.
Well, I wish you good luck.
Thank you so much, sir.
215-634-8065. We are open for the next 20 minutes. We are interviewing Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah. Chip, let me ask you this. Basically, what prosecutors described you as, and I'm just quoting from the Inquirer, as a con artist who cheated banks, his own clients, and taxpayers out of thousands of dollars so he could outfit himself in luxury and project the image of a successful businessman on the rise. Your answer to that allegation?
I am a successful businessman. It's ridiculous to believe, for anybody to suggest or believe that, I was able to buy certain things because of loan money or anything like that.
Are you a con? I guess I'm asking, are you a con artist who cheated banks?
No.
Okay. Did you cheat your own clients?
No.
All right. Why do you think that the federal government is coming so strong after you?
I think that they have a problem with the fact that my dad's been representing the 2nd Congressional District in Philadelphia and its surrounding areas since 1994, and they don't believe in the democratic process. They can't get a few million people to vote against them. So they figured they could go this way, and smear the family name in the paper and in a courtroom. But like I said, I'm going to make sure that after this appeal, I won't be a party to that.
Okay. All right. So you think that this is basically a vendetta against your father? That they're coming after you surely because they're trying to get after your dad?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's ask this question, Chip. Mm-hmm. You deny all charges. You say you are innocent of all of these charges. But there's a juror that basically says, and they never name him, that the evidence against you was overwhelmingly. They opted to acquit you of the one charge, the tax fraud count, because they thought you had made an attempt to file a tax return for the year in question. They still are quoted here as saying that you did no favors by representing yourself. So exactly what was your plan of attack for your criminal defense? What was your plan? When you went in, you said, this is what I'm going to try to get. This is what I think will get me cleared of all charges. What was your plan going in to the 15 days of testimony?
I mean, the plan was to know the facts better than the other side, and the plan is and was to make sure that certain issues were preserved for appeal. The fact is that this isn't just about 15 days, and that's the problem with what has already been reported.
Okay.
Simply, it was always a possibility that I would lose, and I will remind your audience tonight that, former Senator Vince Fumo had a team of lawyers. He had $40 million from a bank sale, and he got convicted. I will remind your audience tonight that former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell, had a team of lawyers, 4 or 5 different law firms. I followed these cases, before I ever had a problem. And what I can tell you is that these people had teams of lawyers. So, look, there's no lawyer in the audience tonight or anybody who knows generally what a lawyer does that would say that they would guarantee me a walk on any of the charges. So if they can't guarantee, I told you about downside risk a moment ago. So the downside risk going into this with a legal team, even $1 million legal team, is 23 convictions. The downside risk of going into this with the federal defender's office as my representation, me not saying one word unless they put me on the stand, which has never happened in this case. So the downside risk was still 23 convictions, and the downside risk of me representing myself, 23 convictions. This was a little cheaper, and I didn't have $1 million, and I just wasn't willing to rely on free lawyers. I mean, it's like, if somebody offers you, a free meal, that doesn't mean that it's the same as going to Capitol Grill.
Was there anything you have, looking back, was there anything you would have done differently in your arguments?
No. I'm confident in my arguments, and I'm confident on appeal, certain issues will just be overturned. Like I said, at the very least, we're going to be talking a new trial here. Obviously, I'm focused on vacating the convictions with no new trial, but that'll be a fallback plan. Let's
go to the phones right now. Let's go to Tom in Overbrook. Tom, you're on 900 AM WURD. You're speaking to Chip Fattah, Jr.
Good evening, sir. How you guys doing?
Hey, good evening. Hey, Tom. Good evening. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm
doing good,
man. I'm sorry to hear about things went down with you, man. I hope and pray that you don't have to, do no time and you get a right appeal, but
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, look, I think, what I mean, I don't know who they're after, but they, like the guy said, they went after Ben Strumo, they went after the other guy, and they don't stop, man. They went after my sister, you know what I mean, and I'm involved in the house of Mojo up there, for years. You had a nephew, Clifford, he died in the Army, man, and, my sister's incarcerated right now, and we went to your father to ask for help, He raped my niece, and we couldn't get no help, but like I said, God moved in mysterious ways, man, and, I sat back and followed this case very closely, man, and, I don't know, man. I think, if you got a representative, a lawyer to help you to file your appeal, maybe you might win, man, because nothing like your health and your freedom, sir. That's all I want to say to you tonight,
well,
man.
Thank you.
But I've been down the road. I'm still down the road. My sisters and Muncie been up here for 30 years. They know. But it's like nobody, when we came to help, you know what I mean, who rapes kids and, your dad was there, but he didn't care. And it was like, my mom is still suffering. So it's a lot. It's a lot that I'm weighing on.
Well, I appreciate Tom.
You don't run around, you know what I mean, fight nobody. But you know what I mean? I think right now, you know what I mean, you need to get an attorney, man, just to win. This stuff is by design, man.
Okay,
well,
Tom,
I appreciate.
Go ahead,
this is Chaka. Yeah, I appreciate you calling tonight. I mean, in terms of what you, look, we're gonna see what happens on appeal. In terms of the comments you made about my dad's office, and anybody not responding, I would just say that, it's my understanding, they get a number of requests, and if they couldn't help you, I'm sure there was a reason, although I can't speak to it tonight. But thank you so much, Tom. Let's take the next caller.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. Before we go to Cliff in Yaden, hold on, Cliff. I want to ask you one last question, Chaka, before we go.
No problem.
You've mentioned during the trial that you believe that this trial was not about anything wrong you had done, but about your lifestyle and the way of getting back to your father, Congressman Fattah. Do you still feel that way, and do you think that your trial will have an impact on how your father will be approached when he goes to trial in May of 2016?
So let's start with the lifestyle part of that. Yes, I feel that this case, in part was about focusing on, a young African American male in Philadelphia, who was, partially because of preparation and hard work, had the opportunity to, have a good lifestyle, go to nice restaurants, buy some nice clothes. That's not everything that matters in my life. Family is very important. Friends are very important. Education is very important. I grew up learning that education is one of the most important things, and I spent a lot of time, figuring out how to make money over the years. Started out as an event photographer, made some money, but at a certain point got to a limit, then tried to figure out the next opportunity. And look, ultimately, back in 2011, I was successful enough. I moved to the Ritz-Carlton residences down in Center City. And, look, I was one of three black people living there. And we're talking 200 units. At the time might have been, half full. The other two people, one of them owned a hospital, and one, based on my recollection, was a doctor, the other one. And what I'm saying is I worked very hard. And I was like 27, these other people, they're older than 40, and look, everybody there, I would say that either their family paid for it for them or they worked very hard. And I worked very hard. And I just, looking back, in terms of regret, I don't really have any regrets. But let's try to answer your second part of your question.
Right, but I just want to make sure that listeners understand. You have no regrets for the way that you argued your federal trial.
That's right, and I think it'll be clear on appeal.
Let's ask you about the second question. I definitely want to go to a commercial break.
That's fine.
The question I asked you was, do you think that your trial will have an impact on how your father will be approached when he goes to trial in May of 2016?
Well, I think that when the appellate decision comes down, which may end up happening, before his trial, you never know, it could get rescheduled. So I would say that my trial was originally scheduled for December, and it just happened. So I would say that, it's possible that the appellate decision in this case will come down, before his trial. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not speaking.
Do you think it will have an impact on his trial?
I think the ruling on appeal will have an impact. Okay. And I think people should remember that my dad's a team of lawyers, including Kevin Mincy and Riley Ross. And they're some of the best lawyers in town. So I think that with him and his co-defendants and their team of lawyers, he's going to do a lot better than me no matter what.
Are you surprised that you didn't get the same kind of, and I know that we got to go to a commercial break, but this is important.
Okay.
But, okay, we'll talk about that when we come back. Let's go to a commercial break. We're speaking to Chip Fattah Jr., son of Congressman Chaka Fattah. He's talking extensively about his time in front of federal court, 16 days. He was found guilty of charges, but he is going to fight the charges vehemently, and he says that he will be found innocent of all charges in the future. You're listening to the Nick Taliaferro Show, an exclusive here on 900 AM WURD. I'm Vincent Thompson. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the final 15 minutes of the Nick Taliaferro Show here on 900 AM WURD. We are in the midst of an exclusive interview with Chaka Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah of Pennsylvania's 2nd Congressional District, which is based in Philadelphia. Chip Fattah has been joining us for the hour. Chip, before we went to a commercial break, I asked you, your father is going to go into his legal battle with a team of attorneys.
Right.
You did not. Do you feel slighted by not having that same? Because I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Some would say, if my son is facing those kind of charges, I am a father and I'm going to try to do everything I can to help my son. Some might argue that the congressman did not try to help you. Your response to that?
That's ridiculous. First of all, I wasn't slighted in any way. Just so we're clear here, I wouldn't even be sitting here without the support of my dad and the rest of my family. I wouldn't know most of the things that I know without my dad and the rest of my family. So in terms of it would be impossible, and just I don't know. It would be downright disrespectful to try to sit here and suggest, not you, but not for me to try to sit here and suggest any type of slight or anything on the part of my family without their support. I just would never. I'm just not sure where I would be. And what I can tell you is that, look, I did have, a great white shoe law firm, Drinker, Biddle, and Reef, for 2.5 years prior to this indictment, and, ran up a bill, approaching $1 million. So it'd be difficult to say, again, that I didn't have a team. I had a team. We just didn't expect it to go this far. Right. So after it went this far, got a quote, at that point kind of had, spent the money that I was able to use in this matter. And my dad's been supportive. I talked to him, twice a day during this trial, and he's been there every step of the way. He's always taught me to be optimistic and remain cool in the face of adversity.
At any time during the lead up to the trial, did the federal prosecutors come to you and say, listen, Chip, we'll drop all charges if you're willing to testify or give evidence against your father? Did that ever happen? And if it did happen, did you think about possibly doing it?
There's no situation in which I would testify against my dad. Number one, because he hasn't broken any laws. Number two, because, loyalty and family are more important than personal interests, to me. And I can tell you that, look, I was offered, 3.5 years. You talked about 4 years and 3 months, right? I was offered 3.5 years, in a plea deal, a couple of times leading up to this. Now, again, I'm sure there's some lawyers in the audience. The numbers are so close, like, who cares? I'm not pleading to anything, number one, because I didn't break any laws. And again, my dad is nothing, my dad is nothing but, a tireless servant, of the community. And, again, I would have nothing to say about him other than, look, he's a great person, and a great father. And, I know people that, may not have had a lot of opportunities that I've had, and I appreciate everything that my dad's ever done for me.
Let's go to Cliff in Yaden. Cliff, you're on the Nick Taliaferro Show. Thank you very much for calling in. Thank you for holding.
And thanks for the interview. I read the paper, and hello to Mr. Fattah Jr.
Hey, good evening.
I read the paper about 3 weeks ago, and it had the article concerning the witness against you, which was, I think, your roommate or your partner, the young guy.
Former roommate. That's right. Go ahead.
So my question is...
His name is Mike Amato, right?
Matthew Amato.
Matthew
Amato.
Is he part... I hear you explaining that, and I see that you were convicted so far. What is his conviction, or what is it? He took a plea. Is he totally out? Can you give that quick explanation?
No, just quickly. I mean, and I have no problem with the follow up. He pled guilty. He pled guilty last August. Now he hasn't been sentenced. That's pending now, and it may happen before February, which works for me. But I can tell you that he pled guilty to one charge related to 3 of the charges that I was convicted of. So essentially, he was able to plead to 1 instead of 3. Like, it was a fairly good deal.
I read with him in it. It was very, very vague. So, with information he gave for that interview against you was definitely not something that I thought was worth any type of convictions. Although obviously it was more to it.
Right.
His interview was very, very weak. So I thought if he was going to be their key witness, I thought based on that, the government had nothing. So keep up the good work. I hope you succeed.
Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Chaka, let me ask you about that. Mr. Amato, and I'm just paraphrasing. In court, he described you as basically watching Law and Order marathons, binging on pizza, and really not doing any work. Wasn't that damning to you in front of a jury?
Yes, and that's why I said they focused on my lifestyle. Number one, I think that when this appeal goes my way, we can talk about Law and Order again. We can talk about what I learned from watching Law and Order. But let's stop for a second. Is there anything illegal? Is there anybody in the audience wants to call up and explain to me what law I broke by watching Law and Order or ordering pizza as a college student? I'd be happy to talk to them. I'd be happy to turn myself in right now. That's something I'm willing to plead to. You know what I'm saying? I watched Law and Order and I ate pizza. In terms of these allegations about laziness and stuff like that, look, I brought in $1 million for my business, over a period of time, including $700,000 in a 32-month period, from 2009 to early 2012. If anybody wants to play the hard work game with me, I'd be happy to do it. I didn't take one day off in that 32 months. And, I'm really not somebody who believes in vacation. There's a scene from a movie that I'm a fan of where the guy says, look, you want to talk about vacation time in the first 1 year, get out of my office. We're here to work. And that's what I believe life's about. We got to work and, have a good family and friends. One of the things I'm fortunate of is, some Jay-Z lyrics are coming to mind, but bottom line is, you get in situations like this when things aren't going well, you get a chance to really realize who your true friends are. People come to my house, they come to my apartment at the time, they drink my alcohol, have some wine and cheese, have some pizza, maybe even have some fancy food at the Super Bowl
party. But let me
ask
you this, Chaka.
No, let me just finish that.
No, but let me,
right.
I mean, with all due respect.
Seriously?
No, if the question, I guess, is this. If you were a legitimate businessman
right.
and can back up everything, why are you still being convicted? I mean, you should have been able to show, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Right.
You should have been able to show that these were legitimate business interests, these are legitimate funds, and I'm guilty. I'm innocent of all these charges. Obviously, you weren't able to do that.
I wasn't able to do that because, the government interfered with my business activities and took the money out of my hands to be able to pay for the top lawyers and the top accountants. Look, I showed in the case, I had an accountant come in, a CPA with 35 years of experience, and he said, look, he brought in $1 million over this period of time. Actually, he said $1,075,000. In terms of legitimate business interests, I was convicted of lying to banks to get loans. That has nothing to do with whether there's $1 million over here that I earned, and I was convicted of, underreporting my income. Again, that has nothing to do with $1 million over here that I earned. So what I'm saying to you is, look, there's no question. And all I was saying before is that, when things are down, you really realize who's there and who's there because you got a nice car, who's there because you can buy bottle service at a club. And what I'm telling you is, look, I had hundreds of fake friends. Now, my phone doesn't ring as much, and it's actually a blessing in disguise.
Let's go to our final caller with the time. Brenda from South Philadelphia. Brenda, you have the last word.
Okay. Hey, I'm curious. What was the racial and gender breakdown of the jury? And then also, what was the racial breakdown of the prosecutors?
All right. Well, there was, 8. There was 8 men and
8 men, 4 women.
8 men and 4 women.
Right. How many of them were black?
One Native American gentleman. Some people might say Indian, but Native American. The rest were Caucasian. Period. You know what I'm saying? Period. And in terms of the prosecutors, 2 Caucasian gentlemen. That's that.
So you mean you didn't have any blacks on that jury?
Yeah, that's right.
Damn. Okay.
But the question is this. As the attorney, you had preemptive challenges as well. So do you think that race played a part in the jury selection and makeup? You're not saying that because you had a mostly all-white jury, that's the reason you were convicted, sir, is that?
I was just answering the woman's question.
No, I'm asking you.
So let's talk about it. There were 90 people selected to be picked for the jury. Less than 10 of those out of what's called a voir dire process. Less than 10 of them were African American. I didn't exclude any of the African American ones. I could tell you that. And they were excluded that means they were excluded by the other side. Okay, so the government. And in terms of the rest of the makeup, look, I'm not saying that that's going to be a focus of my appeal, but I think the caller and her concerns, they're legitimate. That doesn't mean that that's what I'm talking about.
But let me ask you this. No, but I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
Are you saying that because the jury was all white, you don't feel that mostly white, there were 12 members of the jury, 11 were white according to you, 1 was a Native American. Do you feel that jury did not reflect a true panel of your peers here? Do you feel that the jury was racially biased?
No, I think that in this case, they focused on the lifestyle of somebody young, somebody from the city. Most of the people were from the county, and they didn't understand. But again, the federal government is the focus of my appeal. They're the focus of my attention. I'm not sitting here, I'm not going into the appeal arguing about the jury makeup. The jury makeup was the jury makeup. Anybody wants to take implications of that, they can take them. But what I would tell you is that the focus on my lifestyle, the focus on whether I was eating pizza, the focus on whether I watched Law and Order, who cares? Who cares what I watch on TV? Period. Now we're talking about banks and taxes. Who cares? That's what I'm saying, and that's a legitimate point.
Chip, let me give you we're running out of time. Let me give you the final word for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, you were listening to Chaka, Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah, giving us an extensive, exclusive interview here on 900 AM WURD, the longest radio interview that he's done since his conviction last week. I'll give you the final word, Chip. Well, what would you like listeners to know?
Look, first I want to thank Vincent Thomas, Nick Taliaferro, the producers, Flood the Drummer, at Flood the Drummer on Twitter. I want to thank Nick Taliaferro and WURD, 900 WURD AM, for their time tonight. In terms of the listeners, I would say that, you should continue to focus on the good work that's being done in the community by my dad, Congressman Chaka Fattah. And, file the appeal, but really file the decision. That's going to be late 2016, early 2017. I appreciate the community support. I've had nothing but support when I'm walking around the city, when I'm in West Philadelphia, where I'm from. I go buy a pizza. People are shaking my hand saying they hope it all works out. I'm downtown. A priest, hugged me, the other day. Look, I just want people to continue. People should, in the long run, call for reforms of the criminal justice system. We can't talk about that tonight because we don't have enough time. But what I will say is that, I've done nothing wrong. I would never do anything to hurt, Philadelphians or anybody related to the Philadelphia School District. We didn't talk about that tonight. As it relates to, the IRS, I'm a taxpayer. I've paid all my taxes no matter what happened in this case. And as it relates to banks, I would just say, dot your I's and cross your T's as you, if you're a business owner and trying to get a loan. I did my best, and I'm confident I didn't break any law. After this is over, it may take a little bit more time to clear my name, but I'm confident that that the Fattah name will be, people will know that I haven't hurt the Fattah name when all is said and done. Thanks again.
That was Chaka Chip Fattah Jr., the son of Congressman Chaka Fattah, talking here on 900 AM WURD about his federal court trial and the fact that he will be sentenced on February the 2nd of 2016. For all of us here at 900 AM WURD and the Nick Taliaferro Show, my name is Vincent Thompson, producer of the Nick Taliaferro Show, principal at Thompson Media Man Communications. Thank you very much for listening to us here on 900 AM WURD. This hour of the Nick Taliaferro Show was brought to you by Jefferson, where health is all we do. Call 1-800-JEFF-NOW or visit jefferson.edu. For all of us here at 900 AM WURD, have a great night, everybody. You've been listening to the Nick Taliaferro Show.